how are you reading this news about the potential sound of banging that's been heard?
It's sounding very good. I guess if you're stuck in a submarine or this submersible in the ocean, and you knew that people were searching for you, you would also know that the best way of communicating would be through sound. And they'd be sitting there banging whatever they could find to make noise. And one of the reasons that the US Coast Guard, the first thing they did was actually deploy a series of sonar buoys just to listen to see if they could hear anything. That's where they used the aircraft. Was because they were hoping they might hear that. If this is the submersible, it shows that the first scenario, that the submersible had a catastrophic failure, is possibly not the case. So it's now a question of intensifying the search and trying to focus in on that. And it's not easy to focus in on that sound. So they're going to do their best to do that. There's some very good equipment there now. One of the French research ships is due to turn up in the next few hours over the course of today. That has the capability to get down to those sorts of depths with its ROV, the remotely operated vehicle. They'll have kit on site which could, if they can locate the position of the submersible, could start a rescue operation. But it's cutting it very fine. They are literally in their last maybe day and a half of oxygen. So it's keeping your fingers crossed, and it means you intensify the search. Now, there's been a lot of criticism of why don't they let more people go and join in. Part of the problem is they want the ocean to be as quiet as possible. They're trying to listen. So it'll be a bit like going to an avalanche scene and having everyone running around and shouting. You're desperately trying to listen to that sound. And this is why there's been a lot of criticism. Why don't they let all these various people offering to go and help? It's because they want the ocean to be as quiet as possible so they can actually try and pinpoint where the submersible might be.
What they're saying, so that the US Coast Guard have confirmed that these remote underwater vehicles were redeployed in response to that banging. So far, those underwater vehicles haven't, what they've said is it's yielded negative results. What will they currently be doing then to try and locate where those sounds are coming from?
They'll try and pinpoint them by looking at if the sounds are going out irregularly, which is what they need to do, then what they'll do is if they've got a series of sonar buoys, they'll look at the time delay for those sounds hitting the sonar buoys. And that time delay will give them at least a bearing on where the sound's coming from. Now, the ocean's a bit complex because the sound itself bends in the ocean. The beams of sound bend in the ocean. It's not a simple question of getting a triangulation fix on the sound. It's a lot more complex than that in terms of the science. But hopefully they'll be able to try and pinpoint that. What it does show, as I said, is that it's possible, and I emphasize possible, but it means that they are still alive and that the submersible is still in one piece.
Because there are many layers of challenges to come, aren't there? First of all would be trying to find where it is. And then the second problem, if they find it, is how to retrieve it.
Yes, I think if they've got the French ROV on site, that is capable of getting to those depths. I know there's an American one on the way as well. If they've got a decent ROV and they've got cabling to go with it, then it's possible that they'll be able to get a line onto the sub with the ROV. The sub itself isn't that heavy, so it's not like they're trying to raise an aircraft or something. So it's a question of getting a line onto the sub and then back to the surface. If the sub is just basically lost power, it's unusual that it wouldn't be able to release its ballast. Normally what happens in this sort of situation is that the submersible would jettison ballast, and that would allow it to then float to the surface. And that's fairly normal practice for this sort of equipment. So there's a big question of why they haven't been able to jettison that. And it's possible it's got snared on some nets, or it's got maybe snared on part of the Titanic itself. Until they actually find it, we won't know. So I suppose it's good news. The probably most obvious scenario that it's failed completely is less likely. But of course, there are lots of bangs and things in the ocean, so one can't get one's hopes up too much at this stage.